Alright, so I just wanted to do a quick app review for apps that are available for iOS and Android for Warmachine, Hordes. I don't think there are any out yet for Iron Kingdoms, but I'm sure there will be soon enough, if Privateer Press allows it. So, I don't want to talk too much about War Room. You guys probably know how I feel about it. If you don't know how I feel about it, I'd give it like a 3 out of 10 stars. Actually, I take that back. It's not the app. The app works fine. I would give the developers and the people directing the developers 3 out of 10 stars. I'd probably give the app like a 8 or 9. As far as I can tell, it works fine. I don't really have it crash on me that often. Connectivity is good. Functionality is as intended, which is the problem. The intended use, as defined by Privateer Press, and I assume, since they're the ones that pay Tinker House or whatever their names are, the production house, I'm sure Privateer tells them what to add and what not to add and what's necessary and what's not. So the fact that Privateer Press is leaving out many vital, functional requirements from the application is annoying. And the fact that when people bring it up, myself obviously included, we basically get the response of, oh, well, that's for you to do. Well, yeah, but the point of an application is to automate manual functionality, right? I mean, you don't have to be a software developer to understand that. The reason you develop software is to automate something you don't want to manually have to do. A calculator adds numbers so you don't have to add numbers on paper. Army Tracker app is supposed to calculate points of models so that you don't have to calculate them on paper. If you're playing a game that has tiers, it should be able to factor in tiers. If you're playing a game that has contracts, it should be able to factor in contracts. If this model is supposed to have 3 points subtracted from its cost, it should subtract 3 points from that model's cost. These are all things that it should do. At iBodger did them. One person developed that on their own with no backing, and we loved it. I don't know why an entire company paying an entire different company to work on a major release app on a major market for a huge group of people wouldn't take into account those things. I don't understand. I mean, would you, imagine you, got this calculator app for your phone and you opened it up and, it added and subtracted and divided, but multiplying you had to do on a piece of paper and then type in the difference. That makes no sense. Why would you do that? Why would you develop 3/4 of the functionality of an application and then just require the user to take care of the rest when you could just as easily include it in your programming? It doesn't make any sense. It's not even lazy, it's backwards. It's literally active counterintuitiveness. It's silly. I don't know why they would do it. I mean, I don't know if they don't like money. It's weird. But that's War Room. That's developed by professionals. So that's why it has those problems, because it's, I don't know. I mean, the people that make the game are smart. They made the game. They know that we're going to calculate tier factors, and that we're going to calculate our contract differences, and that if a model costs less, we need it to cost less. They know what we do and don't need an application to do, and yet they're not including that in their application. It's strange. But anyway, so the first application on the list is actually from Tiki Torch, and it's called Hit Chance, and it's specifically for, I say it's specifically for Warmachine and Hordes. It could be used for other games, because most games rely on a common system. I mean, usually it's you have your value of how well you hit versus your value of how hard they are to hit, your target, plus or minus some number of dice. I guess in this case it would only work for D6 games around the factor of rolling 2d6, and then an additional in special cases. For us it's boosting or weapon master, whatever you want to refer to it. The application refers to it as boosting. So it's super straightforward. I mean, essentially you have a mat/rat column with an up and down ticker. So you basically set that number, and then you have your defensive column, which is of your target, and you same thing, up and down ticker, you set that value, and it immediately just calculates your chance of hitting under normal circumstances and under boosted, as well as your chance of critting under normal circumstances and boosted. So, I mean, I don't know how many players would be for or against actually using this in a game, because I guess to some extent it could be seen as cheating, because you're giving yourself the advantage of knowing the factual, chance of hitting. But I mean, anybody who studied these numbers ahead of time could easily know a generalization of these factors. I mean, if your chance of hitting is 58 compared to the application telling you your chances of hitting are 58.36, why does that matter? You know, if you could have just remembered 58, that's you might as well be using the app, because the 0.6 or whatever isn't gonna help. You know, so like for example, just looking at a couple of quick screenshots here, and this application is free on Android. It's not available on iOS, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong. But so just looking at a couple quick screenshots, for example, if you have a mat or rat of 6, because it doesn't, you know, determine, versus a defensive 13, you have a 58.3% chance of hitting under normal circumstances, and an 8.3% chance of critting. If you boost, you have a 90.7 chance of hitting and a 38% chance of critting. So it's pretty cool, and it works landscape and portrait, you know, whichever way you want to use it, and it's just a super straightforward app. And as long as your opponent doesn't have any issues with you using it, I think it could really be beneficial. I mean, even if you just use it during your sort of like for fun games, just use it to sort of, I don't know, I mean, I feel like if you used it enough, it would really hammer your percentage, like your chances, into your head to a point where when you stopped using it, you would be like, oh, you know, I'm not even going to bother because I know I have like a 31% chance with this. Or, you know, if I boost here, it really puts me into the effective zone. I go from like a 50-50 to like a 92. So it'll really help you it'll really help train you when to bother with an attack or when to try something different because you know you don't have good enough chances, or however you want to look at it. So that is Hit Chance by Tiki Torch. Very good stuff there. And it's actually got a 5 out of 5, or almost a 5 out of 5 rating. So yeah, 5 out of 5. It's pretty good. Next you have Battle Timer, also by Tiki Torch. In fact, yeah, so both those by the same company. That's pretty cool. This one also great ratings, close to a 5 out of 5. This one is basically used for tournament-style gameplay. It's the same as using a chess clock, except it's set up specifically for Warmachine and Hordes players. So you basically enter in your 2 players' names, you enter in your players' factions, so while playing you actually have the faction symbol that appears, as well as the player's name and the remaining time in their turn, so that's pretty cool. You can enter in a number of turns and a number of minutes length per turn. And then it keeps track of, you know, you start the battle, it keeps track of overall time used, it counts down or it counts up, however you have it configured. And it's just essentially used in place of a chess clock. Think of it as a digital Privateer Press custom chess clock is really what it is. So I myself probably won't be using this one that much because I don't do a lot of tournament play, although like I said in one of my previous videos earlier tonight, this Friday, on Black Friday, I am going to be hosting a 8 to 10 player double elimination steamroller style tournament. So I don't know how many people have the ability to use this, but I'll certainly use it on my games just to test it out. I feel like that would be pretty cool. But again, simple, straightforward app, free, also done by Tiki Torch, available on the Android Google Play Store. Again, I don't know if it's available on iOS. It's probably not because it's a helpful application. iOS doesn't like helpful applications. And lastly is Iron Grudge, which is not made by Tiki Torch. This is made by Karsten Wagner Bang. This has great reviews. It's only got 19 reviews so far, but so far, all good. And this one's pretty cool. This is probably my favorite out of the 3. This is essentially a statistics tracker it's almost like your Privateer Press career tracker. So this keeps track of how many games you've won, how many you've lost, how many you've tied, as well as specifically versus certain opponents. So for example, you could pull up, against Steve, Steve playing Signar, me using Rulik, or even more specifically, me using General Osram. What's my win-loss ratio? It gets down into the details, and I think that's really cool. So it's not really functional in-game. It's not helpful in-game. It's certainly not going to make you a better player. But it's sort of cool to keep track of how you do with which faction or which caster versus which faction or which caster, or even which player. If you have a player that a friend you play against that plays maybe 4 out of 5 factions or something like that for Hordes, and he just kicks your ass with all of them, then okay, I don't play against him ever because it's just a waste of time. Or maybe you always beat him when he plays Signar, and you realize, okay, he sucks with Signar. Maybe I'll let him know that. Or maybe I just won't bother, playing him when he plays Signar because we know it's going to lose. I'll ask him to play something different, or, I'll play a weaker list, or, it's cool. It doesn't have the ability to enter in which list you used, which I think would be a great combination with War Room. Because then you could say like, oh, I used 35-point Osram Jack Heavy, and I have 4 out of 5 wins versus everything but cricks. Then, that's really helpful. Then you can sort of, then you take that to a tournament, and then it's like, oh, I'm playing 3 players, 2 of them are playing cricks. I'm not going to use that list. Or I am going to bring it, but I'm going to bring a different one that's good versus cricks. Like, it's really helpful. You could really sort of build your portfolio of lists and know where to apply lists or where to apply casters against certain casters, factions, or even players if you're doing like sort of like a local meta setup. But and it also keeps track of like the size game that you played and the date that you played. So like maybe you always lose on Tuesdays and just some weird factor like that. But it seems like that paired with other applications could be extremely powerful in growing as a player, because it basically lays out all of your faults and all of your pros and cons, sort of lays them out in front of you and lets you say like, oh, okay, this is where I need to focus. I'm doing fine here. I've never beat this person. Why is that? They always play this caster and I always tried this caster. Maybe I'll try a different one or something like that. So I think that one is probably the most helpful. I mean, short of War Room, which has its own list of issues. But yeah, so, and that also free Android Google Play Store. I don't know if it's available for iOS. I don't have an iOS device anymore, so you guys tell me, but I don't ever remember seeing any other Warmachine Hordes Privateer Press applications other than iBodger, which got eaten. Or not even eaten, really. There was no substance gained. It was sort of just stabbed and left to die in the woods for no good reason, while we waited for 6 months for an inferior app to be released and charged for. But enough of that. I'm probably going to get... I don't know if any mods look at this blog. I mean, they shouldn't. I mean, what does my opinion matter? But, like, I've gotten finger waved at by like mods or PGs on the forums, and I mean, I try not to let my emotions get in the way of things, just make logical arguments, but sometimes you can't. I mean, sometimes when stupidity is just staring you in the face, you have to look at it and go, well, you're stupid, that's dumb, why did you do that, don't do that again. But I'm not a boss, I don't run the thing, I haven't been making games for 10 years. I have to assume that these people know more than I do, but it's funny sometimes the way things come out. It just doesn't seem that way. I mean, every now and then, everyone makes oopses where you go, oh, why the hell didn't we think of that? But when somebody sort of holds your mistake in front of your face and you just sort of go, no, it's not no, like that's immature and it's just silly. Doesn't make sense. So, but enough about War Room. So yeah, independent applications, very cool. Definitely grab them. They're free. Why not? Certainly helpful. And always good to support small application developers. So yeah, that's that.